At She Can, we tell women's stories, how women got to where they are today to serve as role models for others and support others on their journeys. And I'm really happy to talk to Rebekah Clark today. Rebekah, welcome to She Can. You're the founder and CEO of Happy Marlo. You're on a mission to help raise a new generation of adaptable and mindful children that are emotionally empowered to feel more confident and to navigate ups and downs better. You work with children between the ages of 3 and 12. Tell us a bit more about you and your business.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Stephanie. I always am so thrilled to have the opportunity to share a bit about Happy Marlo and how I came to be on this journey. So exactly as you said, Happy Marlo is on a mission to empower little humans with big feelings, is how we like to put it. And this was really in response to a couple of things. I became a mother myself 5 years ago. And at that point, I became quite alarmed, actually, and concerned about the number of children who are really struggling with their emotional health and well-being. And as I started to get more curious about that and looked at the research, this was pre-pandemic, the figures were pretty staggering. And so I wanted to find a way that I could change the narrative for my daughter, but also for all children. My background is in social impact. For over 25 years, I've been working in marketing, communications, and campaigns, all with social impact, as we might now call it, at its heart. So over the years, I've been privileged to work with all kinds of organizations, from the Gates Foundation to UNICEF, to Malala Yousafzai and the Malala Fund. And so there's been this little nudge, this little thread through some of my work around children and young people. And so when it came to the time of becoming a parent, also professionally knowing that I wanted to create something new, the stars sort of aligned. I felt that I was being gently encouraged to do something in this space. And so that's how this came to be. And as I started in the early days of thinking about Happy Marlo and how we might be able to contribute to solving the children's mental health crisis, which is happening across the globe, unfortunately,
Yeah.
I couldn't help but reflect on my own journey, if you will, and some of the things that had happened in my childhood and what had helped me really resolve those things. So I was taken into emergency foster care when I was 10 months as a baby. I was then adopted when I was 3 years old by a loving white family in a very white community. I don't think anyone was talking about diversity back in the early 80s.
No.
And so that presented a number of challenges for me when I was growing up. A lot of issues for me around identity, race, belonging, culture, which all negatively impacted my self-esteem. And my parents didn't know how to support me. You know, they weren't getting any support back in those days. And so what that all meant was, coupled unfortunately with some unpleasant bullying when I was at secondary school, by the time I reached early adulthood, I really needed some support to unpick some of these things that were going on for me mentally. And fast forward to turning 40, having my beautiful baby in my arms, I couldn't help but reflect that, gosh, I've spent the last 20 years really coming to terms with and healing from things that happened in the first 20 years of my life. And during that moment of reflection, as I looked back at years of talking therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnotherapy, reflexology, you know, I've always been a very curious and open person. And so as a result, I had really explored lots of different avenues to support myself. And I realized that the more latter mindful practices had been the things that had actually had the biggest impact for me, discovering that for me, at least, just 10 minutes of quiet meditation every day really supports me. Finding out about breath work and practicing breath work, attending sound bars, and emotional freedom technique, also known as tapping, was just an absolute game changer. And so as I started to kind of join or put the different pieces of the puzzle as this Happy Marlo idea was taking shape, I really felt, wow, there's something in these more holistic modalities that are gentle yet powerful. And if I could find a way to tailor them and help bring them into the mainstream for children specifically, what kind of impact, positive impact, might that have? If we could almost ride on some of the coattails that the likes of Headspace and Calm had done in bringing the notion of mindfulness to the masses, if we could bring this kind of these tailored and these other modalities to children and young people, I just felt that if we gave kids the tools to develop a daily practice that they then were able to maintain in a fun way, age appropriate way, but consistently maintain, I thought, what kind of adults might these children go on to become? And in turn, if they chose to, what kind of parents might they become? And if that being the case, could we finally start to break some of these generational cycles of trauma? And I just thought that was incredibly exciting, and I still do.
And I love it, Rebecca. And when I listen to you, I get goosies because, yes, everything you've mentioned is so important. And I'm so grateful for you for having started Happy Marlo and making a difference here because we have a mental health crisis and we all know it. And children are getting younger and younger. These issues are coming up earlier and earlier. We know that we have to do more about this. Every country has to do more about this. So tell us specifically what Happy Marlow now does to support children between the ages of 3 and 12.
Yes. So we are focused on children, and we're very much around, we call them our little Marlows, and they're our co-creators. So it's really important that we put them front and center of what we do, because one of the insights that we feel quite strongly about is children often don't have a lot of agency. They don't get a lot of choice about things in their life. And so by empowering them to better understand their feelings and give them some tools to manage those feelings or change their states, that's really, really powerful. And so we focus on breath work, tapping, and sound healing, and we're reaching children and families in a number of ways. So we've developed some digital products and also some printed products. We have a lovely deck of feel-good cards. So it's like 25 cards. The idea is you take one each day, and there's a game or a tip or an activity that lasts between 5 and 10 minutes to kind of give you some healthy goodness. So those are the kind of direct products, if you like, that go to children. We're doing work directly with schools. So last week, we were in a North London primary school delivering 4 in-person sound baths and just creating some beautiful moments of, relaxation and calm for the children. We're doing quite a bit of work with corporates. As we know, a lot of corporates are thinking about how they can better support their parent employees. We're seeing this kind of rise in parent employee resource groups. So again, last week I was with Havas, which are a global media agency, and delivered a workshop for some of their parent employees and staff around how can they actually incorporate some of these modalities at home? What are some of the things that might support them as they, we all get triggered by our inner child. I think what parenting really provides is an opportunity for us grown-ups to reparent ourselves and hopefully heal some of the things that maybe we felt were missing. And so we had a lot of that discussion around, how do I not lose it when my child is losing it? So lots of work to support corporates and their parent employees. We've also been working directly with values-aligned brands. So a nice example there is where brands have a family audience, but they're looking for ways to provide additional value to their customers and consumers. We did a great tie-in with Zig and Star, which is a sustainable footwear brand for kids. Back in September as a back to school campaign, and popped in some of our feel good cards and Happy Marlo goodies. So that's the thing about being an early stage startup. You get to be flexible and nimble. And at the minute, we're kind of figuring out where's the space that we can have most impact and doing a lot of kind of pilots and experiments, whether it's directly with families, with schools, with corporates or brands. And that's the way that we're doing this. We're very excited to be putting on a 2-day festival in person in London, the City of London, in May, where we're going to have lots of different practitioners and experts working in these holistic areas for kids and having just a party festival feel for those 2 days.
Sounds super exciting. I'd love to promote that. Rebecca, so what is your main motivator? Obviously, you're a mom, you have a daughter of 5. What is your main motivator doing this work?
I mean, the thread through my career and probably from before is I am a humanitarian by heart. I'm driven by community. It's my birthday tomorrow. I'm an Aquarius, and Aquarians are very much known for their altruistic approach. I don't think it's any mistake that, bar a couple of diversions into the private sector, I've generally worked in government, or I've worked in NGOs, so I've worked in my own consultant. I have a consultancy as well that's a social impact driven consultancy. So for me, I had an old boss back in my government days who would say, well, Rebecca, we're not in the business of promoting biscuits, are we? There's this sense of what we're doing had a bit more meaning. And it's really that for me. I want to feel that there's meaning to what I'm doing and hopefully creating a positive legacy. That's the idea, so that I can look back with pride, and a sense of honor that, oh, when I worked on that actually moved the needle, or it changed someone's life, or we had a positive impact. That's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, and you cover a large area because you cover a large age area of children and you work with parents or carers and companies of where parents and carers work. So yeah, I'm very impressed. Rebecca, so what would you say are the qualities that serve you every day to do this work, both in Happy Marlo and in your social impact consultancy work?
I think curiosity is key. I've always been very inquisitive, as my mum used to say. Other than when I was a child, others might say nosy. But I've always been very intrigued about things. And so I think asking questions, kind of questioning the status quo. Why is it okay? Like one of the early questions about Happy Marlo, I was thinking so many adults, let alone children, but adults are walking around with unresolved childhood trauma. Why is that? And why is a society, at least in the West, that we're kind of okay with that? We joke about the fact, oh, your parents will mess you up. It happens to everyone. Maybe you'll figure it out, maybe you won't. And so what drives me is a curiosity and a prodding of, it doesn't have to be that way. What if we tried it this way? What if we explored what other solutions and possibilities might be? So curiosity has always been a driver. And I have to say resilience, one of the things that we're really doing to support children is around resilience, is around developing grit. And this Happy Marlow journey so far has been a massive lesson in resilience for me. When you're kind of hitting your head against a brick wall, it can feel like if you're trying to raise funding or you're trying to make something happen, or the early days of any new kind of initiative or business, there's teething problems, there's elephant traps, there's things that go wrong. And so it's that sense of resilience and adaptability. And as an adult, let alone a child, having a growth mindset, right? That, well, okay, I might not know that yet, or oh, I don't know how to do that yet. And for as long as I can remember, I've always had this belief that relationships are absolutely everything. And I came from a very normal working class family. My parents didn't know anyone. There were no kind of leg ups when I was younger. But I've always believed that we're not too far removed from anyone. And if you are brave enough to ask the question, reach out to someone, introduce yourself, then why not? The worst that can happen is silence or somebody tells you no. And so I think there's something around being, I like to think of it as being a little bit cheeky with some courage, and to ask for what you want and need. And you never know, people might just say yes.
Yeah, I'm very grateful that you brought this up because I think there are so many women entrepreneurs who have real challenges every day, and I'm one of them. So I think that was really brilliant advice already. So my next question is, what top tips would you give to the parents or carers of that sort of children's age range to create or to foster a more mindful environment so we can grow more mindful little people that
Yeah.
grow into big people that turn into parents or carers?
Exactly. One of the part of our philosophy is leading with love. And we talk about love a lot because that's what's at the heart, or should be at the heart, right, of those early relationships and connections that we have, whether it's our own children or our nieces and nephews, our grandkids, or just children in our lives that we care about. We love them, right? So why don't we kind of lead with that in our families, but also in our schools? We talk about a new paradigm that's really needed in the education system. And again, I'm speaking specifically about the UK and in other parts of the world where we're not creating or fostering the most nurturing environments that are healthy and helpful for children and their educators.
Mm.
So based around this and in consultation with some teachers, some early years specialists and some therapists, last year we decided to launch what we call our Love Manifesto. And we put it on, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, we put it on a little postcard. So it's the type of thing you can easily have on a pin board or on your fridge, and kind of just helpful reminders. There's no rules in Happy Marlo's world, but they're helpful little reminders and nuggets. And so very briefly, L is for listening actively, like putting that phone down. I'm kind of retraining myself with this. Put that phone down when my child is speaking to me. Look in her eyes and really listen to what she has to say. O is for having an open mind, being curious, as I said before, and being compassionate and really understanding. But it goes both ways, towards your child, but also towards ourselves, you know, having compassion and grace, because none of this parenting stuff or looking after kids is easy. V is for vulnerability. So really modeling to our kids, it's okay not to be okay. I make mistakes sometimes. It gives them permission to make mistakes too. I spoke to a mum just last week who said she tries to be really honest with her girls and will say, I haven't parented a 12-year-old before. This is new to me. And when you were 10, 2 years ago, I hadn't parented a 10-year-old either. So I think as much as, you know, we are the grown-ups and there's the responsibility dynamic, I think there's still a safe and healthy way for us to express some of that vulnerability, and that we don't know, we're figuring it out as we go along as well. And then the E is finally for every emotion counts. So creating space for feeling all the feels, as we like to say. So kind of trying to move away from stopping children from crying, like don't cry, or what are you crying for, to replacing that with a sense of curiosity or just space holding. You know, it's making and helping children, I should say, to feel that it is okay to feel all of these different feelings, and let's get curious about them, or let's just sit and hold them, so that we can kind of start moving away from some of these taboos and stigmas that are still unfortunately in place around mental health.
Yeah, very much so. And I think, you know, a lot of it is in England, where you're always supposed to have the stiff upper lip. And the fact that we can't sit with our feelings, I think, and that's what we really need to teach our children. So I'm so grateful for your work. What are you most proud of to date, Rebekah?
Well, what I'm proud of is every time I get a little email or a little message, or I see a family and they tell us, we tried that and it worked. Or, oh my goodness, my stepdaughter, someone messaged last week, my stepdaughter's been really suffering with anxiety. I found out about your cards. We've been using them at home and we're already seeing a difference. Or little Florence, who was sitting an exam at school, telling me, oh, I was feeling really scared before going in, but then I remembered the tapping and I started tapping before we went in. So I know that this stuff works, and the evidence shows that it works, like the scientific evidence show that it works. And very much Happy Marlo's role really is to be a conduit to help people have awareness that these things exist,
Yeah.
help them engage in a way that feels fun, feels age appropriate, all of those things. And so when we hear back from families who's like, and even skeptical parents, I remember there was one mum, Jade, who was using our sound bars for a week. And she said, she's like, I don't know if it is the sound bars, but before we were using them, our daughter was getting into bed with us every night at 4 o'clock on the dot. But since we've been using them, she doesn't do that anymore. I'm like, it might be the sound bars. So that's the stuff I just absolutely love. And I can never hear enough of those, you know, just wonderful stories that it is making a difference in children and families' lives.
Yeah, that's wonderful to have the feedback. Rebekah, so what are the plans and goals for you and Happy Marlo for the next years?
We have some really, really exciting news. We just received confirmation of some quite significant government funding at the end of last week. And so we have a very, thank you. That was a journey, working over Christmas and New Year on that application, but it was all worth it. And so we've got a brilliant team. I can't talk too much about the details, but it's incredibly exciting. And that project's going to focus on our kind of earlier cohort. So the preschoolers into those going into reception in year one, and creating some beautiful experiences that will hopefully get children tapping from as early an age as possible. So I'm really looking forward. That project will be starting in April. So looking forward to getting going on that. And that will take us into the first part of next year.
Amazing, Rebekah. I'm so excited for you. Rebekah, so who are your role models? Who are the people who inspired and motivated you all throughout your life?
Oh goodness. Throughout my life, I would say I've always been inspired by the people who go against the grain, the people who kind of do what others say you can't or shouldn't do and do it anyway and do it with success. And I think that's always inspired me because I've definitely developed into hopefully, well, I being one of those people as well. And I think one of the things I found difficult, and I alluded to this earlier, the way that I grew up within my family, being like the only non-white person in my broader
Mm,
community as well, there wasn't representation, and representation is really key, isn't it?
yeah, it's
We know that you need kind of children, particularly need to see it to believe it. And so it's been wonderful as an adult seeing women in particular and more women of color and specifically mixed race women who are doing, kind of brilliant work across a variety of industries. So that inspires me. But in terms of the Happy Marlo work, it's the teachers who are pushing the envelope. It's the teachers who are coming into their profession and seeing there's a different way of doing this. And particularly in the UK state system, they have so many challenges around them,
mm,
from, a curriculum government policy perspective. And so I just think teachers, educators, those in the early years kind of child care settings who are just doing their absolute best in really difficult circumstances to nurture and grow these young people. I just take my hats off to them.
yeah, thank you for that shout out. It's a very important shout out. These are people that really form the young lives of our children and provide safe environments for happy learning. So yes, I would love to echo with you. And thank you so much, Rebekah, for telling your story, telling Happy Marlo's story, and super excited for what's to come.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Stephanie.